Hallelujah, hallelujah. Blessed be the Most High, King of the universe. Yehudah of our for life, food, clothing, and shelter, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, giving all honor, glory, and praise to the Most High God for another day of life, for allowing us to be here today. I pray and hope that the Most High God will continue to bless each and every one of you, all of you who worship Him and call upon His name. We pray that the Most High God be with the sick, with the fatherless, with the needy, with the destitute, those who are in a worse position than we are. We pray that the Most High God will continue to hear their prayers and their supplications, and that He might bless you all. As we proceed today, we will be going into the portion of Shoftim, and as we always do, well, not as we always do, but as Nasik Zurishaddai always do. He just highlights certain points in the previous week's lesson. So, without any further ado, I'll pass it on to one of my teachers and one of my mentors, Nasik Zurishaddai ben Yehudah. How are you, Nasik?
Great. Good to be back in the apple for half a moment too. First of all, I'd like to give praise to the Supreme Intelligent Universe, God of my forefathers, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The respects to the platform one, the D.C.B channel platform, spiritually the Chief Prince Area in Saska, to the host Chief Uzal, to the Prince's Chiefs, Kohanim, Rabbinate, Maureen, brothers and sisters and visitors to the channel. I greet you all in the time of my forefathers. Shalom Aleichem, and our early Shabbat Shalom. And I like to start with Adonai Septadi Takupi Agiti Adeaka. O Lord, down my lips, and my mouth should declare thy praise. This week, we'll be dealing with a topic that, and these days in time with a lot of issues going on around the world, tend to be a lot of political opposition on one side, but necessary for society to thrive. And that's just the portion called Shoftim. And what's interesting is that when we begin the book of section in the Sidra called Shoftim, it starts in Deuteronomy in the Masoretic text, the 16th chapter, 18th verse, and it concludes all the way to the 21st chapter and ends at the 9th verse. So it's a lot of things that's being presented here. Within this, the course of it, it covers a lot of different topics. It deals with judges and officers, deals with adultery, slaying, controversies, king. Matter of fact, it lists at least 7 different leadership roles within the book. When we talk about that we 7 prominent leaders in the book. Talk about the judges, the officers. We talk about the priests. We talk about the kings. We talk about the Leviim. We talk about prophets, and we talk about the elders. So we talk, about a lot of different leadership roles within that area there. So, and this is what our society, our ideal society, was basically made up of in ancient Israel. So to begin with, I like to just start from the beginning. And it says, judges and officers shall thou make thee in all thy gates, which the Lord thy God giveth thee, tribe by tribe. And they shall judge the people with righteous judgment. I'm gonna stop right there just for a moment. So normally it's in the Hebrew, Shoftim with Tosharim. So Titain Leka, Bekor Shadareka. So when you talk about those judges and officers, that it's a command that you have a system of judgment that's set up. In order for Noah coming off the ark to even begin to try to have a society on a basic level, he had to have some kind of court system set up. And what we have here, and it says, within all your gates. Now, Moses telling them already, this is what they need to do going into the land. But we already have judges from Moses' time that was appointed. And I'm sure that even the ones that was appointed that died, that was 20 years old and older, you mean to tell me we didn't replace them? Is that a question that we don't have any now other than Moses and Joshua and the new priest, that we don't have anybody else dealing in those capacities at this point in time? And one of the areas is he's telling us what we need to do when we get into the land. Because a lot of times when people make a trip and go into the land, they tend to figure, I'm isolated. I don't have to do this anymore. I'm not involved with that anymore. I'm left to my own business. I'm on my own. And Moses is telling them, this is what you must even set up when you go into that particular land in order to be a society. Now, when we talk about the gates, it's not just the physical gates of a city, but metaphorically, you could say the gates of yourself. All right. Of course, you got eyes that could subject to cause a problem, what you see. You got ears, what you might hear, some foul, tale-bearing stuff. Your mouth could be for gossip. And also your hands, working mischief, and feet running to do evil. So these are like gates of the body, where sometimes you got to have a judge to see whether I'm seeing right, I'm hearing righteously, I'm speaking righteously, I'm working with my hands righteously, I'm going to do a righteous cause. So those are some of the things that's on a metaphysical level when we talk about judges and officers in the gates. Now, when we talk about judges and officers, a judge is just theory, as I said often in the past. When he gives a verdict on a judgment, that's theoretical, because I'm saying what needs to be done. I'm telling you what's the ruling. I'm telling you what it sums up to be. But then, when it comes down to the application, it's the officers that must make sure that the judgment that was spoken in theory is put in practical application. Also, when we talk about the 613 laws, statutes, and judgments that's within the 5 books, the CHOKMAH of the what most people refer to as the Torah, that when they count, you have different people count them, different I forget the technical term they call the people that count each law within the book, coming from Genesis all the way to Deuteronomy. And you have a few places where they differentiate between what is a law, whether it's a positive command or a negative command, and what law they would not count as a law, between number 1 or 2 or whatever the case is. But when it comes to this here, judges and officers, you would think it's 2 different things, but it's one and the same, because without theory, without application, it doesn't work. So all of them that have different opinions on which law they count, they all agree that judges and officers count as one law. And most people, when we talk these days, when we talk about defunding the police, getting rid of the certain court systems, then we got to be careful when we think about getting rid of the police, getting rid of certain court systems, because then you're going to have anarchy. And one of the areas is that when we talk about and think about what you call justice and righteousness, it's only a society have to have certain rules in place, laws in place to be able to thrive. So some people might say, in some traditions, it's actually become laws or rules. And one thing is that when you have rules, then you need to be able to enforce it. So these are some of the things that we got to understand when we get into this particular portion. And then judges, the guy just don't come up, person just don't come up and just say, I'm gonna be a judge. You got to be selected. That's why I said you are appointed as a judge. Even in this society here, a judge is elected. Now, you might go to school to be a lawyer and pass the bar, pass the test, and yet you know law well according to the system that you went through, but you can't claim to be a judge. And more often than not, a person might know law well, and you have that in various societies, and especially amongst our community, where people might have actual profession as a lawyer, but are they capable of being a judge? Now, scholasticship and understanding the rules of law is one parameter that we deal with, but also the integrity of the individual is what we look and qualify to deal with that as well. And the integrity of the individual is more enumerated. And the best one enumerated, that's from way back when we read in Yisrael, when Jethro set the qualifications of those that should be judges. And their scholastic ability was just a minor issue compared to their moral stability. That's what he was looking for. And when Moses speaks later on about that he appointed judges at that time, he didn't feel all the characteristics of moral ability that Jethro had spoken of in 40 years prior. And so when we think about judges, it's talking about we appoint them and when it's necessary, but you got to have people to enforce. So we have so many different amongst certain branches of our community court systems, what you say. And then you got to say, well, okay, how far do your jurisdiction extend? And who are going to support the court system? And when it says all your gates, that means that you have the tribe of Benjamin. All right, that tribe had its own court system, their own judges. Simeon had theirs. Reuben had theirs. And what is interesting is that we got a book called Shoftim, Judges. And it's ironic that we got the book called Shoftim without Shoftim. So that's something to consider, that we got the book of Shoftim, book of Judges. And even the book of Samuel falls within that time period. The book of Ruth falls within that time period of Judges. And yet, the people acknowledged that it was like a wild, wild west, so to speak, with different tribes and different scenarios and different issues that went. And it talk about some of the judges that they call Shoftim. You find that they might have been leaders, but you rarely find what case they're adjudicated. The closest we find anybody that, I guess, offhand, besides dealing with Shemuel, who said, thing was pretty much in that area, was the elder Deborah, who sat and said she judged Israel. Now, that wasn't all Israel, but she was acting in a role of giving insight. So during the time of Judges, it was so much chaos going on. And if I give you a judgment, like I said, through the whole book of Judges, they don't talk about Shoftim. And so here it's mandatory that you have a judge, and it's mandatory that you have Shoftim. Also, when you get into the book of Isaiah, and it's part of the Amidas that those people, everyone that say the different Shakari prayers, but it's part of the Amida, those that pray every day, that you want judges and advisors, return your judges and advisors, not Shoftim, because the advisors, if I'm advising you, I got the judgment in court from the judge. I'm advising you how to do something because you want to comply. Whereas when you talk about Shoftim, whether you want to comply or not, you must comply. And I'm going to enforce that, or else there are going to be other consequences involved. So in the future, Isaiah talking about, return our judges and advisors as in the days of old. So we ain't looking for to be forced into observing God's law. Let me move on just a little bit because there's so much going on in this area here. And it's in the 19th verse. Thou shalt not wrest judgment, thou shalt not respect person, neither shalt thou take gifts, for gifts does blind the eyes of the wise and pervert the words of the righteous. As I said often before we get to the 20th verse, is that when they talk about gifts, they use the word in the sense of a bribe. And the word shakad is like a bribe, because it will cause you to actually rule, and favor, and it'll corrupt your judgment. You look for a way to exonerate somebody who shouldn't be exonerated, or look for a way to condemn somebody that cannot, that doesn't deserve to be condemned. So this is some of the things that Moses is cautioning us with. And it goes on in the 20th verse. Justice, justice shalt thou follow. Sedek, sedek to very few things that tell you to pursue. And why pursue it? Is it really running after it? Is it really escaping you that you got to catch up with it? And the thing is that when you're talking about justice to pursue, which is sedek, which is righteousness, that means that you don't rest until you're sure you got this thing perfect. And that is the right course of action. You don't handle, this guy was brought in for stealing a couple of apples. And these are the people that caught him and witnessed that in the deed. Now, only thing we know so far that we see that the apples didn't belong to the guy that they apprehended. And we got witnesses. But we got to analyze to see deeper into that. Is the witness credible or not? So we're going to get into that, at later on within this particular portion. So these are some of the things that we have, and this is something that Moses is bringing out. And one of the things is that Moses, like I said, every job in the past, every job that Moses described in a society, every position, he himself had fulfilled in some form or fashion. Any title that we talk about, he fulfilled in some form or fashion. So he actually lived and became an actual example of everything it is to be like a judge, everything is to be like an officer, everything is to be like a king, like a priest, like a prophet, an elder. All those different things that we talk about, the 7 different leadership roles in a Levite, which the 7 leadership roles that's within this particular portion. He himself fulfilled all of that as a living example. And it goes on to say that while we pursue it, so that we could may us live and inherit the land, which the Lord thy God giveth thee. And it goes on about graven images and stuff. And one of the things is that when they talk about a tree being besides the altar of the Lord, or need to set up a pillar like a stone by the altar of the Lord, some kind of statue icon, or it could be a plain stone. Those are some of the things that the actual Canaanites and other nations did. They would plant beautiful trees outside of their shrine, their temple area, they would call it, and they plant beautiful trees as an ambiance to beautify the outside. And when it comes down to the Mishkan later on with the Beit HaMikdash, it wasn't about the outward beauty that was important. It was about the inward beauty, the inward sanctity. That's what it was focusing on. And when it came to the Mishkan itself. So we don't need outward appearances to really express what's inside, because what was inside was sufficient enough to carry you outside within the world. So this is one of the prohibitions that it talks about. And later on, they would make sure that they don't have trees around the Temple Mount. Make sure that because it's a particular pasukim, the pasuk law, this verse. And in second 17th chapter, they talk about sacrifices, with blemishes, and then it goes into about 17:2. If there be found in the midst of thee, within any of thy gates, which the Lord thy God giveth thee, man or woman, that doeth that which is evil in the sight of the Lord thy God, and transgressing his covenant, and have gone and served other gods and worshipped them, or the sun, or the moon, or any of the hosts of heaven which I have commanded not, and if he told thee, and thou hear it, then shalt thou inquire diligently, and behold, if it be true, and the thing certain, that such abominations wrought in Israel, then shall I bring forth that man or that woman who have done this evil thing unto the gates, even the man or the woman, and thou shalt stone them with stones, that they die. At the mouth of 2 witnesses or 3 shall he that is to die be put to death. At the mouth of 1 witness he shall not be put to death. The hand of the witness shall be first upon him to put him to death, and afterward the hand of all the people, so that thou shalt put away the evil from the midst of thee. Now, one of the things, I'm going to mention this area about witnesses twice. One, an idol worshiper, a guy got a shrine in his house. It's easy to say, oh, that's a statue. That's a statue. You bowing down to this little statue here? You bowing down to this particular tree here? And you got to be very careful because, and that's why you got to inquire diligently, because perhaps you're praying towards God, and if you're praying towards God and not the tree, but his body is facing the tree, and he's prostrated down before a tree, you might think the individual is actually praying to the tree. And that's why you got to inquire diligently. Now we have what they call in Genesis Yehudah, and it says the Creator appeared in Mamre and alone the oak tree. So around, to the outsider that may not be aware of the Creator there, will be Abraham be praying to that tree. To the outside, it would look like he's praying to the tree. The outside, he might be conversing to a tree, but the Creator appeared. Moses in the bush, seeing this fiery bush, and you wind up, an angel. He seen an angel in a flame. So he saw the angel in the flame, but God called out to him by name. So if somebody happened to stumble upon Moses at that particular time from a distance, or spotted him from a distance doing that at that particular time, Moses would look like, they would say, well, what this guy doing praying to a bush and trying to hold a conversation with the bush? He muttering something I can't hear. I'm off, and I don't hear a reply coming back and forth, because this is a private conversation between God and the individual. So that's why the diligent inquiry should take place, simply because we might perceive it wrong out the gate. So we got to check these things out. And when they talk about 2 or 3 witnesses, and this where most people, I had a conversation yesterday, brothers, we always discuss Torah, and that's one of the things I really, really enjoy when I come up to New York in various congregations, that amongst most of the Israelite community, we talk a lot of Torah regular, pretty much, and I ain't really enjoy that. That's something a little bit wanting, more so when I go to other places in different areas of this country. But that being said, that we have actually, say 2 or 3 witnesses, 3 witnesses or 100 witnesses does not change the outcome of a verdict. Since it's 2 or 3, that's why they use the word 2 or 3. All you need is 2 that make something established. When they say 2 or 3, that don't make it more convincing. That don't make it more overwhelming. It just means whoever it is, you're going to have more people to investigate. If anything, you say you got 3 guys to investigate, it's more of a likelihood that the individual, if he's guilty, going to be acquitted, because it's going to be hard for all of them to concur exactly, because he's talking about a death penalty. And you got to be 100% correct. So it'd be hard for people to say the exact same thing when you start multiplying more and more and more. So 2 or 3 witnesses, that's enough. It doesn't change the outcome of the verdict. It doesn't give the verdict more weight, way to condemn the individual, because you got 100 people over here and you got 2 people over there saying this. That what you do is it's established, and the penalty is going to be in place before the actual crime. If the crime before the crime is committed, the penalty is already there in our law. We have a penalty for things in our law for the most part. So therefore, the more witnesses don't change what the penalty should be. So this is why we got to also interrogate witnesses. And one of the things I want to speak a little bit on that particular area too of witnesses, because it's going to come up again somewhat. You have active witness and passive witnesses. So, active witness and a passive witness are different in how you deal with certain things, and most people don't see it as such. One of the areas is which will come soon is when weddings, when a man take a wife and he said, "This is my wife." We got married. I gave her a ring. She agreed, but nobody there, just them two. And he said, "This is my wife." Now, if they got married, no one there but them two, and they say they're married, then how we know they're married? Nobody witnessed this. All right. She might say yes. He might say yes. But in order for it to be valid within a community, somebody else got to say, "We understand and know that." We're up to the community, the family community. And so, in order for a traditional wedding to take place, and we go back and when the Creator presented Kawa to Adam, different story altogether. But we know the Creator also might use terms like heaven and earth. But anyway, it's a different story altogether, which I'm going to touch on. But when we got this discussion about Isaac getting a wife and took her in the tent, we had the discussion. When Abraham sent this servant, who most people refer to as Eliezer, but he sent his top servant to get a wife for Isaac, he had 9 other guys go with him. And the parents also agreed. Bethuel at one point. Then you got Laban and Rivka's mother agreeing at the end to go with the man, and asked her, did she want to go to the man to be married to Isaac, who she never met. So you have witnesses to the whole area, in that area there. So when we come to every other thing with Jacob, contract made, banquet. So you got people at the banquet. So those witnesses are active, because it won't be no validity to a marriage without those individuals active. Now, rabbinically today, traditionally, they say you got to have 2 witnesses at at a marriage. So that's point blank. But being I talk to a lot of people that may not follow a rabbinic tradition, you're going to have somebody to say thus they married, but we was there. So those witnesses are active. Even in a divorce, a man writes a book, a cutting off. Today they call it a get, and he puts it in her hand for a divorce. But when he writes it and put it in her hand, and writing and saying what he's announcing and separating her from himself, somebody got to be there in order to say this is a legit divorce by proxy. Even though it don't say a witness there, how we know he wrote it? How we don't know somebody else wrote it? How we know that she didn't forge it herself? How we know that it was not duress? Those things there. And that is an active witness in that sense. I mean, now let's think about a passive witness. Uh, a, a passive witness would be when Moses say, I call earth and heaven. I mean, heaven and earth to wherever, the witness. And the Creator talk about heaven and earth as being a witness too. They're passive. They're active because the deed being done, and don't take them to condone the deed being done. They're just watching the deed. The deed going to be done with with their input or not. Those are passive. But a marriage can't take place unless the guys are there. So they're active in it. Because the marriage cannot take place. The divorce cannot take place unless they're there. Now, when God say, we are his witnesses in the book of Isaiah. Now, we know other people use that when they knock on the door, bing, 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 bing. Do you know the name of God and all that stuff? We know they use that and they take that part there, but that wasn't the original name that they called the organization. But nevertheless, they take it from Isaiah, I think around 43, 10, somewhere along there. And they go ahead and say that they themselves are actually witnesses. But when God say, "You are my witness," do God need a witness? Being God, obviously, he need witness to a degree such as us, because we're supposed to be a light unto the Gentiles. So, what does a witness does? And we got to understand what a witness actually do. A witness actually reveal the hidden. That's what a witness does. Actually reveal what is hidden. Those things that can't be seen. That's what a witness does. So when you have what you call an active witness, that means I'm bringing and shedding light on some things that everybody did not see. And that's what a witness does. So when we talk about we are God's witnesses, we are giving a testimony by our life, our laws, what we do, and sharing information concerning a God that everybody else cannot see and say this God exists. Therefore, we are God witnesses. That's why I want to speak on that part just for a little, just a little bit, and move on, move ahead. So, and then any questions I welcome in the chat concerning those particular areas there. All right, and I'm gonna skip down to the. I'm gonna pick it up in the eighth verse of the 17th chapter. And if there arise a matter too hard for thee in judgment, between blood and blood, between plead and plead, between stroke and stroke, even matters of controversy within thy gates, then shalt thou arise and get thee up unto the place which the Lord thy God shall choose. And thou shalt come unto the priest, the Levite, and unto the judges that shall be in those days. And thou shalt inquire, and they shall declare unto thee the sentence of judgment, and thou shalt do according to the tenor of the sentence which they shall declare unto thee from that place which the Lord shall choose. And thou shalt observe to do according to all that they shall teach thee, according to the law which they shall teach thee, and according to the judgment which they shall tell thee, thou shalt do. Thou shalt not turn aside from the sentence which they shall declare unto thee, to the right hand, nor to the left. And the man that doeth presumptuously, and not hearkening unto the priest, that standeth to minister there before the Lord thy God, or unto the judge, even that man shall die. And thou shalt exterminate the evil from Israel, and all the people shall hear and fear, and do no more presumptuously. Now, it's going to be a head in the area there. But you notice it says the place of God to choose. That means it's going to be a serious controversy between blood and plead and plead. Also, this is so it could be used as an admonishment for the judges that don't think you exempt from the individual that have an issue that you might have, in that area there. But anyway, you have a blood, but between plea and plea, and then they say you go to the priests, the Levites, and the judges that should be in those days. Well, there's gonna be more than one person. But why go to the place that the Lord shall choose? Because we don't have an appeals court. That's why it's so important that we render judgment correctly, righteously, according as God would have us do. And He let us know it's already there in the book. It's just our understanding. It already was the answer was given to us, but do we understand what was given to us? So that's why, and it talks about the priest and a place, a particular location, because if you didn't like the lower court ruling, you say, no, you ain't qualified. I don't agree with that. Let me go up here and take it to a higher level. We don't have anything like that. So now, when in this case here, I mean, it's a unique case, and it was this ruled by the most esteemed people of your society and time. Then you got to adhere to it, and to violate that and go against it is a death penalty, which is strange, simply because it wasn't a death penalty to obey the ruling, but it's a death penalty when you violate the ruling. Death issue wasn't on the table going up for a ruling, but death become an issue when you go against the ruling. So it's and those that I know a lot of some people don't like to go by David Rabbanan, they go by Doraita, which is what is written literally, but then you got a lot of variables that's involved. And then this also teaches you that Moses might have did something in his time. And Moses even told him in this time that you won't be doing the same things when you get to the land as you did before, about eating meat. You can slaughter it within your gates and everything, just pour the blood out to the ground and stuff like that. So the way they kept Pesach in Egypt gonna be different the way we keep it as a memorial. The way they actually live in booths in the wilderness for the 40 years gonna be different the way we deal with booths to a degree today. So and even during Nehemiah's time, when we read about certain things, because certain things wasn't elaborated in Leviticus in the first 5 about what's a fruit tree, what kind of fruit tree, what is a goodly tree. So those things we find, and while we're in this particular season that's coming up, that we got to understand the Lord well enough and go along with it and seek diligently. But we don't have a court of appeals place. And now let's go about the king. One area I want to speak on briefly concerning the king in the 14th verse. When thou come into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, and shall possess it, and dwell therein, and shall say, I will set a king over me, like all the nations that are round about me. Thou shalt in any wise set him king over thee, whom the Lord thy God shall choose. One from among thy brethren shall thus set king over thee. Thou mayest not put a foreigner over thee, who is not thy brother. Now, before I get into the 16th verse, Moses said, you don't want to set a king over you. And this is a law that say you're going to do that when you get to the land. That I will set a king over me. Now, like all the other nations. So we actually was a theocracy. God ruled. We follow God's law. We have a law given down through the prophet Moshe. So now when we think about a theocracy, why later on we say we want a king like all the other nations? Well, one of the things you can look at in the sense that you want more of a civil leader in some areas, as opposed to a religious leader. We have civil laws, and we have ritualistic laws, what people would say religious laws, as far as dealing with the sacrifices and stuff like that, and mixing up the incense and the oils and different rituals when they light this and when they do this. So we have those ritual laws there. But then we have civil laws when it comes to stealing and this and that and the other. And we have rules of negotiation. We might have to be able, if you say declare peace or negotiate on doing trade with other people, then you might all creating a certain type of peace and truth with other people. Then you want a civil leader, and more so than a religious leader. So we actually have a religious system, which I'm just using that word, which is basically dealing with the theocracy of our nation, and then they're looking for a political system, so a civil system, so to speak. And when we look at those different areas there, that is not a problem, and Moses doesn't find it a problem. And the underlying problem is that we said it one way, but Moses made it clear God will choose who's going to be in charge. You want somebody, yes. All right. You want to be like the other nations in that respect, to be able to have somebody that's going to be a spokesman, because the priest can't be traveling all over like that in different places because of his particular sanctity that he got to have continually. So, all right, we have a guy that can do certain things. So a priest can't be getting defiled. Say, the king of so and so had passed. All right, he had passed. He helped us out. He supplied us with this, supplied us with that. If I don't go, maybe I could send some embassies. Send an embassy. Ambassadors rather over there to represent me. That's some of the areas that a king could do more so readily than a Kohen can do. So it's not a problem. We are given three things pretty much to set up, and when we get into the land, a court system, pretty much, and it's talking about a kingship in the land, and then later on we're going to build a place, a Beit HaMikdash. So basically, three things that can be set up when we get into the land. So this is not a problem having a king. And it says God going to appoint the king. So if God appoint the king, he giving us what we need. And we still under the leadership of God because I'm appointing the king. And when we go further into it, then we're gonna have some criteria. And they say we can't have a foreigner. We can't have a foreigner over us. Now, when you talk about the Dukes of Edom, the Aluphims that they have some issues with that because, well, it's one theory that over the Edomites, when they set up somebody as a king, when they read about it in Genesis, one view, not necessarily my view, but one view is that they couldn't trust each other, so they get somebody that's qualified to be king over them. That's why you're gonna have a succession of lines. And then another view is that they didn't have a succession of line because one guy served for a while, then somebody else get more powerful and say, "Look here, your time is up. I'm taking over." And so you have a different succession of Edomites that's the leaders of kings, but you don't have no dynasty of Edomites being king over Edom. And that's why they call it aloof. Aloof, which is more like somebody that pretty much rise up as a general, a teacher, leader, a dictator, so to speak. When we deal with our king, God gonna set him up. So that's not even our final choice. We want one. And we can't have a foreigner over us in this case. And then let's deal with some of the criteria. He shall not multiply horses to himself, nor cause the people to return to Egypt. Most people consider that because the horses, find the best horses was in Egypt. Later on, some kind of way they migrated to, Saudi Arabia, stuff like that. But that's what at one time, Egypt was known for having the best horses, the fastest horses, the thoroughbreds, as they call them. And it goes on to say, to the end that they should multiply horses for as much as the Lord has said unto ye. Ye shall henceforth return no more that way. So let's focus on letting you know that pretty much Egypt was where he would mostly get the best horses from. Neither shall he multiply wives to himself, that his heart turn not away. All right, so now almost every king had more than one wife. Almost every one of the kings of Judah had more than one wife. So Solomon had the most. His son Rehoboam had a lot of wives too. I believe it was maybe 18, I'm not sure, but he had quite a few wives. David had quite a few wives. So why would these guys do that? And what they consider an exorbitant amount of wives. When you say multiply, that would normally say anything past one. That means 2 wives, it'd be too many. That would normal circumstances. And then when Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines, 1,000 women, why would Solomon directly violate that to that degree, that magnitude? Because he figured, perhaps, that the ruling is that, they won't turn his heart, because he asked for a hearing heart, a listening heart, so they could judge such a wise and understand people in the state of a judge. So therefore, when he asked for that, because a lot of people say, well, Solomon asked for wisdom, he asked for a listening heart. God gave him everything he needed, but that's what he asked for when he offered at Gibeah. So Now, when we look further into it, most people figure his heart won't be changed. His heart won't be turned away from him. And we know later on he burned incense and he built altars, shrines to them foreign gods in the land that existed generations down the line. So much so that even in Josiah time, you still had king, and he was considered a good king, those different things that Solomon had built, different altars that was used to be sacrificed on it. Tell you that he burned incense and sacrifice on it for them wives. So this is what you wonder, that even greater Solomon was, that you can't rationalize and say, I can control this substance. Because the woman became a substance, like drugs become a substance, the woman became a substance. So you cannot rationalize law and say, oh, I ain't gonna get caught up in that. I can handle that. The great man Solomon, there'll be no man wiser after him, and there was none wiser before him. That means that even the first man that was made by God himself, Solomon, knew more than Adam. Can you imagine that? And Adam was far, 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 intellectual than anybody we could think of in the planet. Anybody. So for them to say no man, for creator to say no man before him and no man after him, that means only Solomon had the different understanding and a greater understanding than Adam. No other man had greater understanding than Adam, than King Solomon. And then also that Solomon wrote about the problems with women, and he still messed up. He wrote about corner for rooster, and a contention woman, a good woman builds a house, and this and that and the other. And why would you think Solomon did it? To make allegiance. So he figured, I'm marrying the Pharaoh's daughter. So we're going to be cool. We got an allegiance. I'm marrying the Sidonian. We're going to be cool. Make allegiance. Their father David had a Sidonian wife. So for whatever reason. So when we think about the different marriages that Solomon made, I'm doing this not for my pleasure, but I'm doing it for the nation. But the rules of God is this is going to still be a problem for you. As wise as you are, as much as you talk about it, when people say smoking is dangerous and they still smoke, that's a problem. So let's just go on just a little bit. I'm trying to touch on a couple more things first, and hopefully I don't belabor you with a lot of meandering. And it should be when he sitteth upon the throne of his kingdom. Oh, great, excuse me. Neither shall he greatly multiply unto himself silver and gold. And it shall be when he sitteth upon the throne of his kingdom that he shall write him a copy of this law in a book out of that which is before the priests, the Levites, and it shall be with him, and he shall read therein all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear the Lord his God, to keep all the words of this law and these statutes to do them, that his heart be not lifted up above his brethren, and that he turn not aside from the commandments to the right hand or to the left, to the end that he may prolong his days in his kingdom, he and his children, in the midst of Israel. So this is one of the things that it says that he do. We read all that the king supposed to do so far. We don't read it, no, nothing else. All right, don't do this, horses. Don't do this, multiply gold. Don't do this, get wealth. And then do this here, get a copy of the law from the priest, write a copy of it, write down your own copy, and keep it with you and read it every day of your life. That's all the king's supposed to do. That's it. So, and it said, like all the other nations, then his job description here is very limited, but it don't tell you what a king supposed to do other than what we just read here. What is the king's jurisdiction beyond that? Where do the king live beyond that? So that means that everything else that a king going to do that sits on the throne that God put up going to be according to the standards of the other nations, not according to the standards that we read in the book. That's why Shemuel, when he thought the people didn't want him, but he had some sons that went into slavery, and also God told him that, give him a king. They don't want me. So, and God chose Saul, and he was the best of that generation. But one of the things that we look at is that when we get the kingship, God put a king over him, and Samuel came up and said, "This is what the king gonna do to you." That's what he's gonna say. I mean, that's what he said in the book. Excuse me. That's what he said in the book. That this is what the king, how he gonna operate. But here, it only told you in the law how he's supposed to operate and what he should not do. But Samuel said, judging by the criteria of other nations, that this is how he's going to operate. Not judging according to Torah, this is how he should operate. Big difference. So you wonder why it took so long to be for people to be a king. You wonder why the time of Shoftim lasted so long before they decided to get a king. And one thing, the nation of Israel was not united throughout the whole period of Shoftim 100%. The closest they got before they actually united was to beat up another tribe, to fight against another tribe. 11 tribes against one. That's the closest united they had after Joshua and the elders that outlived Joshua. Beyond that, they wasn't united. They got to 11, never got 12. And it was almost about ready to eliminate that 12th one. So, until they got a king, that's when they actually was united as under a banner and a solidified nation. So when a lot of times talk about this judge rule over Israel, it wasn't all Israel, it's a section of Israel. All right, so I'm just going to speed through this last thing. It's too much to really elaborate on in one setting. But we know we're not supposed to, you talked about the inheritance of the Levites, free sacrifices, the Levites portion. But when they talk about a prophet, I'm going to speak on this just a little bit. In the 18th chapter, 9th verse, when thou art come into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, that thou shalt learn to do after thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, one that uses divination, a soothsayer, or an enchanter, or a sorcerer, or a charmer, or one that consulteth a ghost or familiar spirits, or a necromancer. For whoever doeth these things is an abomination to the Lord, and because of these abominations, the Lord thy God is driven them out from before thee. Thou shalt be wholehearted with the Lord thy God, for these nations that are these nations that thou art to dispossess, hearken unto soothsayers and unto diviners. But as for thee, the Lord thy God hath not suffered thee so to do. All right. So now, before I get to the 15th verse, other people was able to assess certain information and through whatever they did, and these different practices. Usually, and I come from a school. Well, there's a lot of different views on it, but I come from the school where if they say don't do something, it's something that you're able to do in some fashion or form. If they say don't do something, because the Creator knowing everything, the other nations do what they do, and they have certain development of skills. So we're not, God said we don't have to go through all that. And I don't want you to go through all that because some of this stuff is real abominable the way they assess certain things. So this is one of the things my teaching from Ben Ziking, that's what how we view that point. In the 15th verse, a prophet will the Lord thy God rise up unto thee from the midst of thee, of thy brethren, like unto me. Unto him you shall hearken, and according to all that thou dost desire of the Lord thy God in Horeb in the day of the assembly, saying, Let me not hear again the voice of the Lord my God, neither let me see this great fire anymore, that I die not. And the Lord said unto me, They have well said that which they have spoken. I will raise them up a prophet from among their brethren, like unto thee, and I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak unto them all that I shall command him. So now, we had this conversation yesterday about a prophet. Moses said they'll raise up a prophet like me. But Moses never called himself a prophet, but we know he's a prophet. So, and the thing is that Moses said that this prophet, the reason God going to raise up a prophet like unto me is because you didn't want to hear God talk to you directly back then, 40 years ago. You didn't want to hear God. You said, Moses, speak thou with us, and we will hear. But let not God speak with us, lest we die. And God said, well, you spoke well, because if I'm talking to you and you mess up, a lot of y'all might be dead. This is me, viewing it. If they spoke well, that means that perhaps they might have suffered the consequences according to what they said. We're going to die because we ain't right, and we ain't going to be right. So Moses saying, that's why you're going to get a prophet like unto me, in the sense that you're going to get information coming down through a prophet. They tell you what you need to do in certain areas. Now, most of the times, when you get a prophet, it's usually when you ain't get no information from king, priest, don't know what to do. So now it could return to God, and God sends somebody with the information that you need. That's the only time a prophet comes from God. It's when certain things that's not being done or need to be done, and nobody's saying anything, that the Creator will say, I need to warn these people, send them a message. And, most people, and when we practice all kind of witchcraft in the land and during the first Commonwealth. We did all kind of atrocities, and yet no one was concerned about, and is God going to smite me for this? They weren't concerned about that. They were concerned about, can I accomplish this? Could I get that? That's what they was basically focusing on, not about my moral standing, but my economic achievement. That's what they were focusing on. So this is one area I'm looking at. And it goes on to say, I'm going to skip down to 20. But the prophet that shall speak a word presumptuously in my name, which I have not commanded him, to speak, or that shall speak in the name of other gods, that same prophet shall die. Now that's almost a little bit more deeper, different perspective compared to the prophet that they talk about earlier in Deuteronomy, a few in other Sidro. And if thou shalt say in thy heart, how shall we know the words which the Lord has spoken? When a prophet speaketh in the name of the Lord, if the thing follow not, nor come to pass, that is the thing which the Lord hath not spoken. The prophet hath spoken it presumptuously, thou shalt not be afraid of him. All right. So now, the other prophet have you go into other gods and talk about serving other gods. That was another prophet might do in that sense. Um, which is different from when you compare the prophet or a dream and a dream in the 13th chapter of Deuteronomy. But this one here, it tell you that when he's speaking in the name of God, and the thing not follow not. So it's about whether his words come to true or not come to true. It says, you don't have to worry about it, worry about him at all. It's only you put him to death if he tell you to serve another God. So some people and prophets, as we read about in the Jeremiah, a lot of the prophets would say, this is the word of the Lord, blase, blase. But the stuff don't be true. They had a lot of false prophets, but they false prophets in the name of God don't pay them no mind. So they like borderline come in, they playing on the tightrope, so to speak, because they're not actually saying that you're gonna serve another God. No, this comes from the God that we serve. I'm gonna make it up as I go, so to speak. So this is the difference between this particular portion talking about prophecy, prophet, as opposed to Deuteronomy and the 13th. And plus, you notice the thing about dream is not even included here because we don't deal with dreamers or dreams. We don't deal with that as Israelites. We're not looking for, if God gonna give us a message, He gonna give us a message through a prophet, and that's what Moses said, not through a dreamer or dream. So we don't get dreamers or dreams to tell us what to do. Joseph was a dreamer of dreams. That's it. But that's not for us. People have dreams. That's for them. But we, as a nation of Israel, we get prophecy. All right, and so our prophets have visions and get a word. Now, I'm just going to speak on this last thing right quick. City of refuge. We got city of about battles and about 4 different areas. I'll try to get these 2 things real quick. City of refuge. When they divide the land in 3 parts on the underside of the Jordan, they're told to actually have cities of refuge, 3 cities of refuge. They must clear the way. And it talks about an individual that goes there. Who's qualified to go there? A man that kills his neighbor unaware. All right. So since the man kills his neighbor unaware by ignorance, not paying attention, not safety factors. That's why you got these OSHA and different safety courses around the world in different industries. So the man, and they use the example, chopping down a tree and the axe fly off and kill an individual that's with him. And he had no issue in past times with the individual. So he never had a problem with him and stuff like that, but he's dead. Now, he gonna run. It's not a, and you notice most of the time, it's not even considering a family member. It's not a family member that they're considering. It's but another individual. And the family member is completely not considered because if it's a family member and he's killed, then you go back home and say, look, man, I was doing so and so, like killed so. They would know immediately. Did y'all have beef or nothing like that? And so happened while we was out there. But this is more in reference to a person that's not a family member. Now, it could be a family member that, it's a lot of controversies, and you could discuss that further. But focusing on a guy that's not a family member, then they're going to send a revenger of blood after you. They tell you, don't stick around to try to explain it to the family member of the individual that's dead, but run to the nearest city of refuge. And the way got to be, the ground got to be clear. You can't have the sign turned saying it's this way or that way. It got to be clear direction to the city of refuge. And the land is divided in 3 equal parts, so everybody have an equal chance of running to the closest city of refuge in their neighborhood. And when they go there, one of the things is that he stays there in the city of refuge. They call it Makala. That's the Hebrew term for it. And one of the things that when he gets there, then they escort him to wherever township or tribe he's from, and he's put on trial. But he's under protected custody at that time. And when they have a case and they find out that and indeed he didn't hate him, this deed was something that was a mishap by an intention on his part, ignorant to all different safety factors, then he's escorted back to the city of refuge, and he got to stay there till the high priest died. So now, the city of refuge is not all prisoners. You got Levites there, you got society there, but who maintains this individual while he's in the city of refuge? Since it's a city of refuge and it's a Levitical city, the Levites got to maintain him. His property might be 5 miles away. He can't farm his land, this and that and other. So it's going to depend on the people bringing their offerings to the Levites. That's why I talk about don't forsake the Levites, because here's the individual in the city of refuge. I'm away from my property. I can't go there and do this and run this. And my people can't always make it, bring me stuff. And I might not even have enough family members to be able to work my property while I'm here in the city of refuge, trying to preserve my life till the high priest die. Do I pray, long live the high priest, or do I pray, Lord, please let my time be short here? So that's a heavy burden for the high priest, and the high priest may not be nowhere near him and don't really know all the people that's in those cities that's under his lifespan. So that's a hard job. I got people under my lifespan, some looking for me to help them out and save them, and other people looking for me to die. So as a high priest, I got to pray that no accidental crime go on, no slaying goes on. And this individual is called a murderer. But yet, he's not charged with murder if he didn't do it. Now, if he did do it, then they kill him. If he come out before time, then the virgin of blood could kill him. If he come out before the high priest died. And one of the things that people used to say, well, suppose he could beat everybody in the family. A revenger of blood is anybody they hire from. It could be third, fourth, fifth cousin, as we say. Said, this guy here, I know he got skills. You see him rolling, and he slipped out of the city of refuge, catch him. Or some people might just say, I'm going to camp out for a while. And people might supply him enough to camp out for a while to see if you ever step outside the gate. Because the rules, if you step out the gate, and the book it makes it clear, if you step out, you're violating already a judgment that is rendered by the judges, and that is a death penalty anyway, no matter how you slice it. It's a death penalty because the judgment is rendered by the judges that should be in your days. And once that's rendered, and you go against it, it's like, man, I've been here, man, 10 years, I got to go and take my chances. It's a death penalty by law. And the last thing I want to speak on is about the the 4 exemptions for going to battle. It ends really about a cold case file, which is a unique law in itself. But perhaps maybe if I can remember, I'll touch on the cold case file briefly next week. But on the battle, 4 exemptions for battle. It talks about a house, it talks about a vineyard, and it talks about a new wife, a betrothal, and then it talks about fear, and it goes out to battle. And I'm just going to start from the beginning just a little bit, and then I'll focus on. When I go forth to battle against thy enemies, and seest horses and chariots, and people more than thou, thou shalt not be afraid of them, for the Lord thy God is with thee, who brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And it shall be, when you draw nigh unto the battle, that the priest shall approach and speak unto the people, and shall say unto them, Hear, O Israel, ye draw nigh this day unto the battle against your enemies. Let not your heart faint, fear not, nor be alarmed, neither be affrighted at them. For the Lord your God is he that goeth with you to fight for you against your enemies, to save you. Now, that last thing, to save you, that already might be something to consider. If God's going before me, then I don't need saving. The victory is mine. So why would he throw that last part in and say, save you? I mean, God never lost a fight. So what do I need saving for if he's in front of me and I'm going through the motions like I'm busting some cards out, which is like what's called shadow boxing, or doing forms in karate martial arts area. And then the 5th verse, and the officer shall speak unto the people, saying, What man is there that hath built a new house? All right, so now the officers begin to speak, military officers. All right, and then and not dedicated. Then they can talk about him going home. All right, and then the last part, they talk about the vineyard, which ain't overnight, and then it talks about a new wife. Every guy in the battle. All right, lest he die in the battle. Now, if God's going to save you, why now talking about lest you die in the battle? Because you're going to be saved already. But is it a doubt that you're going to be saved when the priest already told you that God's going to save you? And then you get the officers talking about these 4 exemptions that's there. And then the 5th one is the most influential individual. The 5th one is when the guy himself decides to go and talk about fear. All right. And he's the most powerful individual. And it goes on in the middle of the 8th verse. What man is there that is fearful and faint-hearted? Let him go and return unto his house, lest his brother's heart melt as his heart. All right. And and thou shalt, and it shall be, when the officers have made an end of speaking unto the people, that captains of the host shall be appointed at the head of the people. Now, what is different when it gets down to the faint-hearted guy? It says that it not only talks about him, but everybody else. When he talks about the first guy die in the battle, next guy die in the battle, next guy something's taken from you. Something's taken from you, which is your wife. All right. So now, if your wife is taken, because you died in the battle. When it comes to the faint-hearted guy, he's the only guy that they're talking about that battle's not even an option. It does nothing. The only guy that battle is not an option is with the faint-hearted guy. So, and yet he's still influential if you stay around, and he's supposed to go back home. And so this is some of the other things here. I'm gonna stop right here in this particular portion, and I'll try to pick up some of it before we go into key to say. But also let you know, remind people that during the month of Elul, we're trying to make this is a month that we do accounting of our lives that we did from last Yom Kippur, that we improve or that we fall backwards, and what kind of improvement we want to make before we get to Yom Teruah, and some people might call it Rosh Hashanah, but Yom Teruah, and then so we could focus only on our character and spiritual development before the Creator, and try to repent before the Creator for Yom Kippur. So I hope you got some of what I said, any mistakes from my own. And I'll greet everybody, Shalom Aleichem, the early Shabbat Shalom, and leave any questions or comments in the chat, and I'll try to get back to you as best I can. All right. Shalom.
Hallelujah. Toda Rabbah Nasik, thank you for your wisdom. Praying that the Most High God continue to be with you and bless you. And thank you all for tuning in. May the Most High God bless you all with a good Shabbat rest. And Yah willing, we'll see each other next week. Shalom, shalom, and everyone have a great night's sleep. Hallelujah.
Let's get knowledge, wisdom, understanding. We'll do our standing. All praises to the Most High, His laws and commandments. The CHOKMAH BINAH here to push it through your speakers. Judgment, truth, and love should be coming from the leaders. Yeah, knowledge, wisdom, understanding. We'll do our standing. All praises to the Most High, His laws and commandments. The CHOKMAH BINAH here to push it through your speakers. Judgment, truth, and love should be coming from the leaders. Yeah.